this is a question you really should answer, because I mean, your whole strip is about Windsor and, you know, living here. Whereas for me, I'm working from scripts, so, you know, it's a little
Yeah,
different.
I'm guessing the scripts that you're getting are not from Canadian
No,
writers.
usually.
They're coming from LA, New York, wherever.
That's right.
And you're working in a vacuum here in the city of Windsor. Nobody sees you. It's the perception that you are sitting down with a writer and an artist and you're huddling over the drawing board and coming up with ideas. I think that's an old game. It probably changed in the 70s or 80s. But now, like, have you met most of the writers that you...
Well, I've met them just from conventions. But yeah, the idea of being able to sit down and really hash things out, that doesn't happen. And even if that were geographically possible, writers right now, you know, we don't, it used to be that writing in comic books was a patronage job. It was, you were a buddy of an editor or whatever, but now these are, you know, screenwriters and producers. Sure. and you know, guys that really know what they're doing. So for the most part, they do what they do and give you the script. It's rare that I have the kind of input that I would like to have, to be honest.
So you don't interact with Jeff Loeb, for example, because
I
you've done a lot of
sure.
script
You
work.
know, we talk. He's a great guy, but and you know, actually, when I started Ultimatum, which is a book we just did, and actually when I did that Spider-Man issue, he asked me generally. I really wanted to draw the Rhino, and he put the Rhino in, but the actual story is all him, and I stay away from it. He has themes that he wants to, you know, touch on, and I just do my job.
And Tony, you must be used to it from years of doing your own
Yeah,
writing and drawing.
no one will work with me, man, so I have to do it all by myself.
Is it different every time as well? Like, are you writing some of them or drawing others and then writing it later?
I have probably about 7 strips going at one time, going back and forth, trying not to lose what I'm doing from one to the next, but my deadlines are crazy, and I shouldn't have taken on as much as I have, but I do, and I hopefully will have a vacation week sometime, and I'll catch up. And because what happens is the quality of the strips, from my perspective, I know most people look at these things and they flip through and they read it for about 8 seconds and it's over. And I've spent 3 or 4 hours on each one of those things. And if one line on the conduit's face isn't right, I'm bitter about it and I'll redo the whole thing. And I know I shouldn't, because I could probably get another 2 or 3 strips done if I just looked at it and said...
And I've said, whiteout. Whiteout. Listen.
No, man, because you got to have pristine artwork at the end, right?
Yeah.
Sorry,
I do.
Dale, you had a question?
Yeah, actually, how much do you script ahead of time? How tightly do you script? And if you could talk a little bit about your process as someone who does both, and then I have another question.
Sure. On my strips, I have the basic storyline worked out probably for the next 5 or 6 stories. So I have stories to probably cover me until June or July of next year. The actual daily strips, the dialogue, I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I really am. I'm working today on material that's going to be in the paper on Tuesday and Wednesday for the Conduit. Now, for my other strips that are in a lot of other papers, the Conduit is only in the Windsor Star right now. Mick and me and Saturday Afternoon are both in about 40 papers apiece. So unfortunately, or fortunately, because I probably push it all the way to the deadline, because that's just my nature. Those 2 strips are weeks and in some cases a month and a half ahead. So it's the Conduit that's really, you know, that's the one I'm really enjoying doing right now, and unfortunately that's the one that's suffering because I'm just pushing it really fast. So I'm hoping to get ahead and come out with slightly better, more consistent artwork. But I really am just, you know, going with the rough storyline and starting. I sit down, draw, bang, and by the end of by the time I get to the end of that page, that's where the comic strip's ending for the day.
And I have a similar question for Dave, and that's, if you're working with different writers, what's the difference in how tight the script is? Do you get some writers that are actually telling you what angles they want, etc.? Do you get some writers that give you more latitude about how to tell the story visually?
Yes, especially in the beginning of my career, I used to work Marvel style. Ironically, I wasn't at Marvel at the time, but it used to be, I would get a script that would just be a page just full of information, and I would have to read it and break down where I wanted the pages to be and where I wanted to put everything, and I had a lot of control over the way that I choreographed every scene. And I did that for 7 years, and when I got to Marvel, by then things had really changed, and Marvel, which, you know, was always the place where they did the Marvel style, was doing a DC style, which is full script. You know, panel one would have a full description, and even the writers that give you a little more leeway still give you the angles, still give you, you know, and they can be a little frustrating because for the most part, writers aren't artists, and as great as they are with the story, there are times I wish they would back up a little bit and give me a little bit more room to interpret. And I still take that room, I just try and be very careful. It's kind of walking a very fine line, because I know that if I stay within the spirit of what they've written, and I don't just mean getting the story across, but I mean getting it across in the way that they want to get it across, because there's a certain mood that they're trying to go for, and you have to sometimes read between the lines with writers that aren't quite as concise. But the guys that work at Marvel now, they're writing at such a high level, and they're so good, they're very good at getting you exactly what they want.
And they seem to have a fairly good visual sense as well.
Yeah, I think in order to write, you know, in the big leagues, you have to. There are times it could be frustrating, but I found, for the most part, you know, I don't have to do a whole lot of thought when it comes to that. I mean, there's thought that goes into it, obviously, but at least I'm not fighting the script.
How about the sale of Disney? What do you guys think of that?
Well, that's your.
I don't know. Nobody knows. The people that say they know don't know. Like,
What Mary was talking about is the sale of
That's
Marvel
right.
Comics to Disney. Disney
you.
purchased it.
Yeah.
So.
This is about a month ago, and it's exciting because, you know, there are Marvel movies everywhere. I mean, I'm sure most people have seen the Spider-Man movie and the X-Men movies and all that stuff, and it's exciting. And now Marvel's producing their own movies, so it's really become a big business. But at the same time, our actual comic sales, we have graphic novels in bookstores, you know, which is great. We didn't used to have that, so that's a big part of our business. But the actual monthly comics come out just in specialty stores, which we love, you know. But it also can be kind of limiting because it's difficult, and I'm sure you run into that. It's difficult to get new people in the door, and we don't really. For something that is so mainstream in North American culture, you would think that you could just go into a Walmart and pick up at least one of the bigger titles, but it's just not the case right now. And Disney has distribution that is massive. So on that front alone, we don't know. Everybody's very, and not just people that work at Marvel, anybody in the whole business, because generally speaking, Marvel and, you know, DC to a bit of a lesser extent drive everybody else's market. So if Marvel can get into a market, so can everyone else. So yeah, it's exciting whether you work at Marvel or not.
But are you worried about like what they call like the Disneyfication
Yes.
of Marvel? Because
Yeah,
like someone
we
like
all
me,
are.
like I, for example, I like Black Panther. You know, like it's what I read it. But there's a lot of other comics that I like, you know, single issue comics that I like that are very, say, non-mainstream or indie,
Sure, yeah.
that come out, and there's a part of me that's freaking out, because I'm going, how about the, you know, guys that just get the occasional issue or just starting out? Is Disney going to, you know, all of a sudden, are those guys going to lose their jobs? Are
And
they
this
going
is-
to,
oh, I'm sorry.
I'm asking you, are
Yeah.
you concerned for those guys?
Well, and this is the part that nobody knows. Nobody knows really if Disney will actually have a positive effect in terms of distribution, or if they just want to be able to exploit, you know, the licensing, which is really big. Actually, the licensing for Marvel characters is bigger than our publishing.
Wow.
And, you know, and the movies are obviously bigger. So we're all hoping that they really want to concentrate on publishing too. But at the same time, it's a little scary because that could mean that they could put constraints on publishing in order to get them into a larger market. For my part, to be totally honest, I'm such a mainstream artist. I have no real problem with that. I hate to say, you know, I wish I could call myself more of an artiste, but, you know.
No, it's true. Like the stuff you're selling, every time your name's going on a book, it's selling copies. But the stuff you're talking about is probably the stuff that's selling 15,000 copies instead of 150,000 copies. And is Disney going to take a look at that and say, you know, is it really worth our while? Does it warrant our effort to sell 15,000 copies?
Do we have the ability to market this in other markets? Can we,
Yeah.
you know, is there like a lunchbox that we can put this character on? And if not, it might disappear. And that very much could happen. And nobody knows. And Disney has said that they won't do any of that. And publishing actually, to our, I guess, benefit, is actually making money.